Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about a certain thorn I've had in my paw for the better part of 4 years here on the channel. Again, I don't pretend that most of you watch this channel have been following since the beginning. Frankly, that might have been a bit weird even if I would have loved it. However, about 4 years ago I made a video here on the channel regarding an April Fool's joke. I'm sure at least one of you will remember, hopefully fingers crossed, about me making a video about an official Plex NAS. It was a jokey video I put out there. It had about 29 puns in it. I'm very immature, and although the video itself, because the channel was small, they didn't get a huge amount of traction at the time. Over time since then, that video has had thousands of views, about 5,000 or 6,000 I think, which even for an old video isn't terrible at the start of a channel. And the article that it was attached to, which had even more puns because I'm even more childish, has had something like 80 to 90,000 hits over time. Now, in that 4-year period, my hair's got greyer, my beard got longer, but this thing has remained in the background of the channel all that time. It sat there on a shelf for 4 years, and throughout those 4 years there's been a little bit of me, and alongside a lot of you in the free advice section, wondering why hasn't Plex just released its own NAS system? Because there are other multimedia server providers out there that provide both a hardware and software solution in a combined box. And indeed, the reason I went for this, which by the way is an old Buffalo Link Station NAS with a sticker on the side, and indeed that so-called VHS tape that's inside of Die Hard, I might add, is an old board game wrapped in paper. Why isn't there a Plex NAS? Because from the outside it's kind of a no-brainer. The number of people that buy solutions like these just to host, literally just to enjoy the multimedia on Plex, surely that must be enough for any brand to think, do you know what? We could just slap our brand name on something and start marketing that. Better still, they could go ahead and partner with an existing NAS provider to provide an official Plex NAS solution. So why isn't there one? Well, in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 clear reasons why I think Plex will never release their own network attached storage device. I think there is plenty of reasons beyond these 5 why they will never ever entertain the idea of jumping into the hardware market anytime soon, but at the same time I think these are the 5 key reasons. So let's crack on with the first reason why there'll never be a Plex NAS. Now this first one probably is the most obvious, but we've got to get it out the way. Ultimately, Plex as a platform is not as hardware literate as a lot of network attached storage providers or even media center providers. Yes, they have developed their platform for a multitude of different hardware configurations, constantly rolling out new iterations of the Plex server and indeed Plex client application for different hardware architectures, different CPUs and different setups, even multimedia outputs as well for applications to be installed in things like smart TVs all the way down to home consoles. They are very software literate and they know the capabilities of their platform. However, I think it would be remiss to think of them as hardware literate, notwithstanding the fact that new iterations of hardware arrive, such as the Synology DS223 arriving with that RTD 1619 CPU, and there is still, at least at the time of recording this video, no official Plex client for that platform. They constantly have to stay on top of a varied range of hardware architectures, definitely the CPU being the focal point there, to change and adapt their platform as well as continue to evolve within it. They would have to open up a whole division if they were to truly focus on specific hardware development, which inevitably would lead to 2 things. One, it would end up scaling back research and development on third-party hardware architectures there, but also it would, as a business model, start to err them towards recommending their own hardware architecture over others, which inevitably would undermine the access for all users overall. And then on top of that, you've got to look at third-party media hardware, such as Roku boxes, Fire TV, and of course the ever-popular NVIDIA Shield. NVIDIA Shield still to date one of the most popular, easy, affordable Plex media server devices. These are all things that, if Plex were to bring their own solution, would more than likely suffer in development on these very accessible and very popular client hardware devices. Now, I mentioned in the introduction, they could partner. Maybe they could contact the likes of Synology, QNAP, Acerstore, TerraMaster, even some of the lower rung down the ladder, hell, even Buffalo and their Link Station series, to partner with them to get official versions of those devices. And they got quite close when we saw the WD MyCloud series, their Pro series, was emblazoned with the Plex Media logo there, and it was kind of heavily associated, the two things together, with the WD NAS systems and Plex. But that didn't last very long, and I think ultimately, even if they did partner, it wouldn't be a long-term partnership overall. It would be more of a branding license thing. And it would still lead to a system that is first and foremost a NAS with its own NAS software, with Plex being an optional extra afterwards. And talking of development and adapting Plex into that hardware deployable state, we have to acknowledge that Plex Media Server is never going to be plug and play. Despite you see a lot online of a lot of kind of Eastern websites with little media boxes, which are basically just Android boxes with the version 9, 10, 11 of Android slapped on, and then access to everything from Plex to Kodi and all those different streaming services there. Even they are not truly plug and play. And if Plex were to go down the road where they were going to release a NAS that is a Plex Media Server NAS, the problem starts with things like default directories. Having different directories for your TVs, your music, your photos, they would have to force users to put data into those directories, or have some default directories that people would then be able to adapt later on. And then if people buggered up their own setup for those directories, then Plex would have to step in and provide support to reconfigure that there. The same goes for default logins. Then you've got to think root and admin logins. Then you've got to think things like compression licenses that we talked about here on the channel with HEVC or H.265, highly efficient video codec support there, requiring licenses. And it's just a Plex Media Server NAS will never be truly plug and play in the same way that an HDMI media stick or even a Blu-ray or DVD player is truly plug and play. And I think that's another big hurdle for Plex, where they couldn't just release the hardware solution. It would have to be tinkered and tailored in very specific ways, and they'd have to make allowances for the continued support afterwards for people that either knacker their system or that it's just not plug and play enough. Next up is the balancing act between having a platform that can promise to do so many things and have a wide-ranging scope of your different end user base that has to be tackled every day from a lot of these NAS brands. And that is to do with not just providing one solution for all. They would almost certainly have to provide tiered solution. At the very least, a low, medium and high tier solution. Now, they could, roll out a super deluxe, incredible device that can play everything from day one, but that would be incredibly expensive. And one of Plex's, interesting and arguably more desirable points is its affordability to allow people to play their own media when compared with regular subscription services. Again, your Netflix, your Hulu, your Prime Instant, etc. All of those platforms and their subscription services, Plex is meant to be a desirable alternative to that because there is a free tier and that premium Plex Pass tier rolled in with that small, medium, large access user, whether they want to go completely budget, they want transcoding, or they want to go high end. So if they went down the hardware route to provide a Plex solution, it would have to be, within those categories as well. And by designing that, they've now got to design 3 different architectures minimum, with each of those at a different price point. Would they include the hard drive media or SSD media inside? Would they roll in a Plex Pass as well? With that Plex Pass, which has support of things like digital TV and even retro gaming now on the Plex Pass subscription, they would potentially have to be rolled in as well. So just sticking their name on a NAS box wouldn't be enough. The whole system, and indeed the delivery and the narrative from a presentation stance, would be very complex indeed. localized output, because let's face it, most users that are going to enjoy their multimedia on Plex Media Server, the bulk of them are doing it from the comfort of their sofa on a big TV. Yes, you can watch your phone and your tablet and whatever, but the majority of users are enjoying their media from that big TV. And a Plex Media Server NAS, a Plex, PlexyDrive, Plex NAS, whatever we called it, that device would have to have HDMI out, and therefore the HDMI out would either have to be a mirror of the internal services, which is not great and definitely hard to navigate, or they'd have to create a completely separate GUI, either running parallel or as an alternative outputted via the HDMI. You would have to have the Plex Media Server application and a Plex client running next to each other, running parallel from within the same box. Now, this is something that we see continuous issue with the likes of Acer Store and QNAP, when they are running not only their own internal NAS software in QTS and ADM with the Plex Media Server app, but they both also have in HD Station and Acer Store Portal an HDMI parallel graphical user interface, and there is no official Plex app for both of those. There's lots of modded homebrew ones because Plex themselves haven't rolled one out for those platforms, because that NAS again would need to have two versions of Plex running. It would have to be the server and the client, because from the comfort of your sofa you would need a simplistic user interface with a remote control that you're flicking through, and not the more customizable and accessible version that will be running as a Plex Media Server app internally, once again resulting in split development, continued R&D with no real confident success that it would be rolled out, and then you would have to continue supporting it for security and improved features over time. Ultimately, it's just another example of how Plex would just have to really stretch its people resources even thinner. This last reason is probably the most speculative of the lot, but I do think it bears examination, and that is, as long as Plex maintains itself as a software-only company, they can largely keep their hands clean when it comes to things like piracy. I think it would be fair to say that there are some users out there that use network attached storage devices to contain a great deal of copyrighted material, and you shouldn't be doing that, but nonetheless people do, and it's one of the main reasons that applications like Kodi have been lambasted in recent years, and why it's been removed from the majority of official NAS platforms because of that association with piracy. And again, we've seen Kodi installed on a number of different of those Eastern little media boxes and being tweaked in advance to access streaming platforms outside the boundaries of legality, which really shouldn't be the case. And I think with Plex, as long as they're providing the software, they are keeping their hands clean of any of that piracy. And I'm not suggesting that in any kind of cynical way. I'm just saying they must have weighed up the pros and cons and thought, if we provide a combined hardware and software solution, we are going one further step towards enabling a lot of that. And again, there's a lot of arguments out there that will say words like nanny state and use words like, soft approach and bits like that. But I do think it has to be said that Plex has probably sat down and thought, do you know what? This is our line and we won't go any further than that in providing these solutions. Then it comes down to the ethics of the end user, what they want to do with it. But this has been 5 reasons why there will probably never ever be a PlexyDrive NAS like this one existing in the real world. Again, I've linked in the description to the original video and article below. I recommend checking them out. See if you can spot all of the puns. Some of them I'm quite pleased with how subtle they were, given how old they were on the channel. And on the plus side, I still fit in this shirt. Lovely stuff. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. There should be guides linked below to other articles that I've done recommending different NAS devices of different scales, sizes and prices for a Plex Media Server NAS, so check them out. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a lovely April, and I'll see you next time.